Marvel's Phoenix Man, the ultimate power rises. Please like, share, and subscribe. In the television set in front of countless people, a blurry figure appeared. This figure had a dim background, and itself was like a fog, and there was a clear mask mark on its face, but unfortunately, because it was too blurred, people could not see clearly. Hello everyone, I'm Phoenix. It's an honor to meet you, and now I'm going to talk about the world. Countless people saw a voice on the television. This sound is very strange, like an electronic synthesis, resounding throughout Manhattan, New York, and even the entire United States, and even farther away. What's even more bizarre is that everyone hears different voices. Some people hear English in their ears, some are Chinese, some are still French, German, and other languages, in short, so that everyone can understand what the people on TV are saying. And that's not all. At the same moment, such a voice was heard on the onboard radio of all vehicles driving throughout the United States. The appearance of this voice made many people feel fear and panic, and then this emotion spread rapidly, and in just a few moments, the entire United States has fallen into a strange atmosphere. People put down their hands and looked at the people on TV in shock. We all live on Earth, and in the billions of years since the birth of Earth, there have been powerful creatures and powerful civilizations. In our generation, technology is highly developed, material abundance, almost everyone can get what they want, but now I want to tell you, what you see is only the appearance. There are countless ordinary people in this world, and among countless ordinary people, there are mutants and mutants. These people have a variety of strange abilities. Some are extremely powerful, such as Magneto, Professor X, and others. There are also extremely weak, and ordinary people are no different. In the shadows of the world, there are many powerful organizations, such as the S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau in the United States, the Shinspire Bureau in China, and the Hydra that has long been hanged but still has its remains. These powerful organizations master super technologies that ordinary people can't imagine, and in addition, there are many superheroes, these people with powerful special abilities, all the time subverting the scientific common sense of the whole world. People can fly, people can bathe in fire, people can become steel, and so on. Beyond your imagination. The figure on the TV seemed to be sighing, and seemed to be sighing. The general public can still maintain a sound scientific concept under such circumstances, and I sincerely admire that what is crazy and subverts scientific common sense at all times is often displayed in front of you, and you can continue to develop science and technology. To be honest, I'm really surprised that you're not crazy. At this moment, I don't know how many people heard Liang's words. These people include ordinary people, high-ranking officials, and mutants. Ordinary people think it's a prank, officials and the like feel threatened directly, and some mutants think he's a talent and dare to be so high profile. But your vision is still too shallow, only to focus on the Earth's grain-like land, and you don't know that you should have looked up at the starry sky, where there is a powerful existence that you can't imagine. We are not alone, and we even say that in the whole starry sky, the Earth is like a weak baby, and there are some threats that you are not aware of. The Kree, the Krulls, the Shia, these powerful alien empires, have always been a threat to Earth. And Asgard, Jotunheim, Muspelheim, these things that have long existed in mythology, you still don't know. There are more terrifying beings such as Thanos, Star Devourer, and such a horror, and you don't know anything. I tell you this, it is only equivalent to a science popularization, which is a small gift from me to mankind all over the world, and at the same time a warning to some people. What you don't know, I know, and what you know, I know better than you. If you want to know more, look for it, and you'll find the answer you want to know. The figure on the TV flickered and seemed to disappear, but then suddenly it came out again. By the way, I almost forgot one thing, the tsunami that happened in New York today, I made it, well, and the previous stock market crash, which is also my means. If I want to, I can destroy the whole world at any time, but hopefully that day will not come too soon. At the end of the conversation, the figures and voices on the TV have disappeared, and countless TVs have returned to their original channels, but some of the TV channel hosts are looking at each other. Obviously they have seen the picture just now. Leon, who alone faced the whole of America, and even the whole world, did a terrifying live broadcast. Episode 56. At this moment, countless people witnessed such a miracle. A bold guy who dared to fight with the whole world, threatened many blocks, and even threatened the authorities of the United States, and openly admitted what he did outside of New York Harbor. Oh my God, this guy is an absolute genius. No, this is a devil. The huge wave he set off with one hand has killed hundreds of people in it, and no mutant is more dangerous than him, not even Magneto. Wow. Look, we mutants still have such a hard temper. Who is he? I'm going to find him, I'm going to follow him, and he's definitely going to make our mutants build a nation. Countless people are talking, some are afraid, some are admired, some are hated, and among them there is a group of people who are very silent. These people are the top brass of the United States, such as the president and the congressman, everything who knows the inside story. There is a rare squeak. In the eyes of these people, Leon is indeed a great source of harm and instability, but after the daytime wave flooding the harbor, all of them understand one thing. That is, Leon is not easy to mess with. This is completely a person who does things according to his own preferences. The laws of the country are not even interesting in his eyes, and there is not even a glass of red wine interesting, which makes these people who are good at playing politics a little bitter and resentful at the same time. No one dared to provoke Leon at this time, and they were very unclear why the covert means would be detected by him, but this alone was enough to keep them at a distance from Leon. In a large conference room, a group of people are sitting precariously, and the conference room has a monitor that occupies an entire wall, divided into several pieces, some of which broadcast the day's wave disaster, some of which are street monitors of other cities, where a person is rapidly killing a criminal. And a small screen is playing the situation that appeared on the previous TV. Most of these people have gray hair and are not young, but from their calm momentum, it can be seen that these people are not ordinary. Let's talk about it. Such a person, how should we deal with it? The first man with blonde hair frowned. One man slapped the table and said in a hateful voice, "No matter what, we must not let such a threat be in sight, and when necessary, we can discharge the army." This man's words were echoed by others, and immediately someone followed. "He has hundreds of billions of assets, we can completely freeze it, otherwise if he threatens capital again, we will still not be able to deal with it next time. Yes, no matter how terrible his means, he cannot be an opponent of the army, and we do not lack the means to deal with mutants." The leader nodded, but then suddenly took the remote control and pressed it, and the surveillance of the street in the picture quickly zoomed in. He pointed to the screen. "This is the video record from the Atlanta side. The video was recorded 2 days ago. The person in the video is a mutant. Do you know what ordinary people call him? Hero. They called him a hero, and it was ironic. And this person, according to estimates, is definitely not weaker than the Storm Woman, and such a person, there are now a total of 64, almost every big city. Their abilities are different, but in terms of lethality, one person can easily deal with a well-equipped 100 special forces." This said, patting the table, although he said, "Now we can confirm that these people are controlled by Leon." There was silence in the field, no one said a word. Some people knew the news, while others did not know. Those who knew were silent, and those who did not know were in shock. Damn. How could he have such an ability? What means did he use to envelop these powerful mutants? Some people are extremely angry. The specific ability has not yet been investigated, and there is a speculation from S.H.I.E.L.D. that Leon probably has some kind of technology for transplanting other mutant abilities, because those 60 or so people have one thing in common: they all have healing factors similar to Wolverine and saber-toothed tiger. Damn. Chet. Everyone felt trembling, and Leon's hidden forces in the shadows made these people even more worried, and they found that no matter what method was used now, they could not have a direct confrontation with Leon, because they had no idea how terrible Leon's true ability really was. But just from what was now almost on the surface, was enough to make them feel extremely difficult. Now let's talk about what we should do to him. The man who led it. The people who had just said that they were going to give them sanctions were all silent, and no one said a word for half a moment, and when they saw the scene, the person shook his head helplessly. "Let's go here first at today's meeting, notify the various intelligence departments, and don't provoke Leon again." Episode 57. In the following days, the whole of the United States, and even most of the world, had a lot of turmoil because of Leon's actions, and when the mutants knew that such a fierce man appeared in their own race, they were very happy, and some simple-minded guys immediately couldn't resist their impulses and ran out to do things. And there are many such people, and for a time there has been turmoil in many places throughout the United States, and many thugs have begun to wreak havoc, and in their simple minds, there is no fear of this at all. The American conquest also has intelligence agencies and the military, and in these few days, Leon has broadcast a live broadcast to let an unknown number of ambitious people run out. At night in New York City, no one dares to go out these days, because New York has been chaotic for several days, and many mutants have turned into thugs at night, robbing, strong, killing, which has become the main theme of the New York City night. Leon sent the Dark Ministry in other cities, but he did not send the Dark Ministry in New York, which led to the fact that New York was a bit chaotic these days. Tony transforms into Iron Man, carries out his justice, and goes out every night, but even if he is beaten by iron, he is almost tired and half dead, and he has wandered between life and death several times. Fortunately, he is not only a hero in New York City, there are also people in X Academy who have come out to do justice during this time, but what Leon did not expect is that Magneto's gang actually ran out to insert a foot, but also stood on the side of superheroes, which made people scratch their heads. Perhaps they didn't want to see the order completely destroyed, but Leon then denied this idea. Magneto's ambitions were not small. As for why Magneto did this, he couldn't figure it out, and finally didn't bother to think about it. However, these days Leon is very relaxed, after he made such a fuss, for the time being, no one dared to give him eye drops behind his back. He was now spending every day easily, and Jean Grey's day and day never stopped, so that 6 days passed, and his ability was greatly improved. Now that he had reached the late stage of the 2nd level, he could swallow a huge amount of energy at once, and his mastery of matter had also reached the nanometer level. That is to say, he can easily decompose a substance to the nano level, which is much smaller than the cell level. The improvement of his ability was extremely stable, and Chingri's ability had also improved, but the speed of improvement was not as fierce as his. In addition, his other abilities had also been significantly improved. Needless to say, the healing factor is now forcefully cut a wound on the body, and this wound will heal directly in 1 second. This healing ability, other people with self-healing factors cannot do it at all. There is also the control of magnetic force. Liang can easily feel the entire Earth's magnetic field circle. He roughly estimated, if he uses full force, he can move the inclination of the Earth to more than 30 degrees, then the equator becomes polar. Not only that, but even more fiercely, he can even pull the moon closer, when the moon and the Earth are hedged. Of course, now he has not reached the point of madness, but the improvement of ability, now on the Earth, no one can hurt him. The American government and he now have a wonderful tacit understanding. He did not do things again, and the American government did not target him again. Both of them seem to have forgotten what happened before, but what each other really thinks, only the parties themselves know. Liang knew very well that the United States could not just admit it. As the only hegemonic country on the Earth for decades, they naturally did not allow such a big uncontrollable factor to appear in their own country, but now the facts made them have to give up temporarily. After all, Liang's deterrent power was too strong. Lorna also knew later that he had a woman like Chingray by his side, but she didn't say anything. She knew very well that a man like Leon, it was impossible to put his mind on a woman, or even love or the like. It was also arbitrary. She had already had such preparations after confirming the relationship with Leon. But Leon still respects her, and there is no such thing as a big sleeping in the novel. He is not enthusiastic about such things. Sometimes it is just emotional. This period of time was indeed quite stable for Leon, but he also knew that there would be other things happening secretly, so Leon asked Svija to gather intelligence and inform him of any situation in time. And just then, the next day Svija reported a message to him. "Sir, there's movement on the west coast." "What's the movement?" "A hammer fell from the sky." Episode 58. The hammer fell from the sky? Leon winced slightly, and then a smile appeared on his face. So to speak, Thor's plot is also coming. Asgard, this ancient kingdom hidden in the depths of the starry sky, has always called itself a god, but unfortunately, it is still an ordinary intelligent creature, but it is more powerful than the people of the earth, and there is nothing surprising about it. Leon had no idea about Asgard and the rest of the kingdoms of God, and in his opinion, the gods in those kingdoms were only a little more powerful than the people of the earth, and they were much worse than the real gods. "But you can go and see what's going on over there." With this thought, he said, "Send me the details." "Okay, sir, please wait." Moments later, a translucent screen appeared in front of Leon, with some news reports and information obtained by Svija into the intelligence agency's database. Just by seeing the hammer, Leon had already determined that it was indeed the hammer of the god of thunder, and the magic of Odin on it could not be lifted by ordinary people. Only people with integrity could use it, which involved a problem of identity, and people who did not agree with the hammer could not lift it at all. "Sir, it is now blocked by S.H.I.E.L.D. people, and a man who claims to be Thor has infiltrated it, but is now under the control of S.H.I.E.L.D. people." Leon nodded, since Thor, the god of thunder, had arrived, and Loki, the god of deception, must have also arrived on Earth, and he was very curious about these gods. After reading the information, he went to the living room, behind the floor-to-ceiling window, where Chingray was standing, looking at the traffic below. Her personality had a very strong desire to destroy, but now this desire was suppressed by Leon. The relationship between the two is very direct and complicated, and it is direct because she is now basically a subordinate of Liang, and everything will be based on Liang and at the behest of Liang. Complicated is because she only wants to get power from Leon. The two have a physical relationship, there is not much intersection, but they have the same ability with each other. If there is no strong suppression of Leon, she is now estimated to have become a real dark phoenix. "Get ready, let's go to Arizona." Leon rode. Chingray, dressed in the clothes specially made for her by Leon's laboratory, was a red and white tight suit, and a pale red cape behind her, which outlined her seductive posture to the fullest. With the indifferent dark color, there was an extraordinary charm of sexiness and indifference. At least every time Leon saw her like this, he had an urge to squeeze her under his body. Fortunately, he was not the kind of person who was hungry, and this emotion was easy to control, and Chingray now had no interest in anything other than Leon's desire, because the main destructive desire in this personality had been locked by Leon's telepathic ability, so she would appear so indifferent now. She didn't have anything to prepare, so she just stood quietly. Liang stepped forward and held out his hand. The latter coldly put his hand in his hand. The two held hands like this. Liang said, "Let's go." Liang's current psychic teleportation ability is extremely powerful. A thought can basically go to any corner of the earth, and this hand alone is not something that other mutants can do. The figures of the two suddenly disappeared from the same place. Liang used his psychic teleportation ability, and the two directly teleported and disappeared. Arizona, a state on the west coast of the United States, most of which is desert, borders Mexico, is a landlocked state, and its economy is only in the middle and lower reaches of the entire United States. The figures of Leon and Chingray suddenly appeared in a desert, which was not a desert, but there was not much vegetation in the land, and it seemed a little deserted. In the distance in front of the two men, there was a camp, and many armed soldiers were on guard around it, and from time to time there were cars passing through it, and in the center, a translucent facility covered it, and it was not known what was stored inside. Leon knew very well that Thor's hammer was inside, because no one could move the hammer, unless it had unparalleled strength and could lift it with pure power, but such a person, for the time being, could not even be carried by the Hulk. Leon took Chingray's hand, and the two walked forward so calmly. The two figures appeared very abrupt in the desert, and they did not think of hiding, so the two were quickly discovered by the people in the barracks. A few minutes later, a convoy of men rushed in front of them, heavily armed with combatants and a heavy machine gun. As they approached, a man in the first car suddenly changed his face. "Damn. How did he end up here?" This man is none other than Phil, the agent who has a relationship with Leon. Episode 59. At this time, Agent Phil had already begun to think of cursing the mother. He was one of the few people in the whole base who knew the horror of Leon, and when he saw the Chingray's side next to Leon, he was even more directly grinning. What the hell is he doing here? He also brought Gray, 2 Omega-level mutants. No, he must have exceeded the Omega level, an Omega-level mutant, and a surpassing Omega-level mutant. How can this be resisted? As he was thinking this, the combatant next to him asked him, "Sir, are you going to capture those 2 people directly?" Chet. Agent Phil was startled into a cold sweat and hurriedly said, "Shut up, don't think you can take those 2 people down, they are not something you can deal with. Tell you a little bit about it, see that man? He may be the strongest mutant in the world, and I have every reason to suspect that he can erase us all from here with even a single thought if he wants to." Sizzle. The people who knew Phil's bottom were all inhaling the cold air, and what he said was so exaggerated that several people in the car did not know what to say, and for a while, the atmosphere in the carriage was very strange, waiting for the order of Agent Phil. And Agent Phil was also sweating at this time. No one knew Leon's temper better than him. When he took someone to capture Leon, doubling Leon's direct killing of the people he brought, that kind of determination was very fierce, and he still remembered it vividly. "It's all right, inform the others, no clash with him no matter what, keep your distance from him, don't allow anything to happen for a while, don't shoot at all." "Sir, in that case." "Stuff in the base." Before the man could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Agent Phil, who of course knew what the man was going to say, shook his head, and said, "When he comes here, your mission will be impossible, and even if you retreat now, your superiors will not blame you. To tell you the truth, I will let you retreat now. The appearance of this person, everything is out of our control." Is he really that horrible? Some people doubted. Agent Phil didn't have the heart to give them too many things, so he simply said, "This person, I guess many of you know him, I can't tell you much else, you just need to obey my orders." "Yes, sir." The convoy soon came to a stop more than 10 meters in front of Leon and Chingray, and Agent Phil got out of the car hard. If there was anyone he least wanted to see, it must be Leon, who could have left a lot of psychological shadow on him in the first place. So ask Agent Phil to have a shadow area in his heart. Off topic. Leon saw the person coming, his eyebrows were slightly raised, and he looked at him with a smile, and Agent Fayer had to cough dryly, and after walking in, he said, "Mr. Leon, there is a military blockade area in front, if you have nothing else to do, I want to ask you to leave." Leon did not open his mouth, but just looked around. There were more than 30 heavily armed soldiers in the convoy, and by this time many people had already seen Leon's identity, and he heard the whispering voice. Seeing Liang's gaze, the corners of Agent Fayer's mouth twitched, only to feel that Liang's gaze was too similar to the gaze he had when he first saw it, indifferent, and he did not put human life in his eyes at all. "I'm here for what's inside, are you sure you want me to leave?" Liang said calmly. Agent Phil's scalp suddenly tingled, his fists clenched, and finally he could only sigh, "Well, what do you want to do?" "Nothing, I just came over to see, not interested in where that thing belongs, just a little curious about that thing, just look at it and go." Liang said, "He is telling the truth." "Really?" Agent Phil said with great joy. Leon shrugged, too lazy to talk to him more, and then walked past him toward the front. Agent Phil calmed down a lot, and quickly used the walkie-talkie to order, "Spread out, don't stand in the front." Those soldiers were like ghosts in their hearts, looking at Leon, who was calmly moving forward. For a while he did not know what to do. At this time he received Phil's order, and suddenly one by one was relieved, and the convoy quickly retreated to both sides, not daring to block in front of Leon. Leon and the two were not fast. It took more than 10 minutes to come to the base, and they did not know whether they had been notified by Agent Phil. The security personnel of the base did not stop Leon, and one by one armed fighters also paid homage to Leon, and the two came to the central position with such a big swing. "First, sir and madam, please wear protective clothing." One man stopped two people. Leon waved his hand, "No." Passing the man and going straight into the central facility. Episode 60. The facility was closed from above with a translucent material, leaving several circular corridors through which Leon and Chingray walked in, and wherever they passed, whether heavily armed soldiers or scientific researchers, they retreated to the side, apparently early in the morning. Leon was not surprised by this. He was now in the eyes of some intelligence agencies and high-level officials, absolutely a huge deterrent existence. No one would not be able to get through with him at this time, especially if he still did not know the purpose of his visit. Agent Phil had already followed him at this time, carefully speaking for him. "This thing first fell 3 days ago. No one knows where it came from. We suspect that it is a product of shape, because the material on the hammer has no one can analyze. It is a completely new material that we have not seen." He had just asked the Bureau, and the answer was that he could give up this thing when necessary, because in S.H.I.E.L.D's view, this kind of thing, although magical, is not the kind of precious that cannot be given up. Leon just nodded. He said, "No doubt, this is indeed an alien product. To be precise, this is a mythological product, because the person who uses it is the Norse mythological thunder god Thor." "How can that be?" Agent Phil naturally did not believe. Leon shrugged his shoulders and continued without concealment, "Believe it or not, I have already said during the live broadcast before, there are still many intelligent races in this universe, and there are many powerful beings. These beings are beyond imagination, some are even self-proclaimed gods, have a long lifespan. For this kind of immortal species, the Earth is just a small place in the countryside. Your vision is always fixed on the Earth, completely unaware of the dangers and opportunities in the vast starry sky. Forget it, you don't understand this, you are always a group of short-sighted guys." Leon's words did not give face at all. Phil was very cheeky and twitching, although Leon did not name names, but he naturally knew who he was talking about. Leon and Chingray soon came to the center of the facility and saw the Thor's hammer, and the ground around them had been left in the sky, leaving only Thor's hammer slanted into a dirt pillar. Thor's hammer was fixed along with the pillars below, and it was obvious that no one could lift this thing. "How many times have you tried?" Leon asked suddenly. Agent Phil shook his head helplessly. "I can't count, everyone in this base has tried it, and no one can lift it, even the most powerful crane, it can't lift it, this thing is really weird." Leon nodded, not surprised, and said to Chingray, "Go up and see if you can lift it. This thing has the magic cast by Odin, and he doesn't know how powerful Odin is for the time being, but the guy who can be called the God King will certainly not be weak." Chingray's mouth did not open, and her body slowly floated to the side of the hammer, reached out and squeezed the handle of the hammer, and then obviously began to exert force. Under Liang's gaze, the hammer was still half unmoving, and Chingray had already frowned at this time. She released her hand, her eyes gradually became dark, and a pale red light surged around her. Leon saw the hammer flutter slightly, apparently Gray's mind control acting on the hammer. The next moment, something that surprised Leon happened, and he saw that the original untouched Thor hammer actually rose up so tremblingly, while Chingray's brow was wrinkled deeper and deeper. Obviously lifting this Thor hammer with her mind power also cost her a lot of effort. The hammer rose more than 3 meters high in such a trembling way, it seemed extremely unstable, as if it was going to fall down the next moment, and just as Leon thought, the next moment Thor's hammer really fell from midair. Boo! With a muffled sound, the dirt pillar was directly broken, and the hammer was buried without dirt. Phil on the side was stunned, looking at this scene in some disbelief. He didn't know that there was magic in this thing, he only thought that this thing was surprisingly dense and weighty, and he was horrified that Gret could lift the hammer of Thor. Leon waved his hand, and the dirt that had buried Thor's hammer spread out on both sides, and Thor's hammer was already exposed. Chingray flew back, shook her head slightly, and said, "I can destroy it, but I can't lift it." Leon nodded, then fell into the pit himself, came to Thor's hammer, leaned down and squeezed the handle of the hammer, and then slightly forced. As he thought, Thor's hammer didn't move. He felt that he was not lifting the hammer, but more like mentioning a building, and the weight of the hammer was indeed terrifying. "I don't believe it yet." He tensed up violently and used all his strength. Episode 61. His pure physical strength now, even he didn't know how powerful he was, really compared, it must be much stronger than someone like Captain Migwa. So with this force, I immediately saw the muscles on his body tense up, and the casual clothes on his body were all bloated, and under the strength of his whole body, his feet stepped into the dirt for more than 30 centimeters, and the dirt directly passed through his calf belly. Hooray! With a loud cry, Leon gritted his teeth, and saw that the thunder god's hammer shook slightly, but it was still connected to the ground as if it had taken root, and Leon used his greatest physical strength, but still did not lift the thunder god hammer. When Agent Phil saw this, his eyelids jumped, because he saw Thor's hammer, and the almost imperceptible shaking under the action of Leon's power made him feel frightened. Phew! Leon stood up, his tight muscles calmed down, he was scratching his head a little at this moment, he didn't understand magic at all now, and he couldn't analyze what the magic acting on Thor's hammer was. However, he now understood one point, that is, this Thor's hammer was not simply heavy, but because of unknown power reasons, it was integrated with the surrounding environment, and the weight of the surrounding things was carried on his body, which was a manifestation of solidification. He chuckled at the thought of this, and then pointed out, the pale red light on his body flowed, and he saw that the hammer of Thor was also surrounded by this light. Get up. He opened his mouth lightly. The next moment, Thor's hammer flew as if it had lost the shackles of gravity, and it was as heavy as Gray's control. Leon stretched out his hand and squeezed it on the handle of the hammer, still feeling the unshakable heaviness, but under the control of his mind, he simply cancelled out the heaviness. The strength of his current mind, not to mention the hammer of Thor, even the moon can pull away from the orbit with full force, and it is too easy to control this quake hammer. The magic of Asgard? In the end, it is somewhat mysterious, but the power of the mind is directly to the source, and the control of the mind power can directly bypass the twists and turns. As he muttered this, Thor's hammer danced rapidly around his body, and in an instant it became a remnant, and a strong stream of air rolled up around him, blowing up the mud and making the place manic. Agent Phil had completely lost his words, and his mouth was wide open to look at the scene in the field, and his mind was almost a mess. God, he really got it up, how is that possible? Leon didn't bother with Agent Phil's shock. Thor's hammer stopped at a thought and hovered in front of his eyes, a red light in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth slightly cocked. Let me see what's in the deepest part of this thing. The power of the mind can directly penetrate to the origin level, although this Thor's hammer is an artifact, but after being magically cast by Odin, an existence like an intelligent creature is formed inside, and only those who have identified with it can lift it, so that Leon's telepathic ability just comes in handy. His gaze was on the hammer, and the perspective was quickly zoomed in, showing that he saw the pattern on the hammer, then went deep inside, saw the crystals between the materials, and then zoomed in again, saw the free energy in the crystals, and then went deeper again, entering the core of the hammer. It was a pale blue nameless being, blooming with light, twisting like thunder and lightning, racing freely in this void-like space, as if it were a ray of thunder and lightning born at the beginning of the universe, putting a trace of its own legacy in it. Aha! Leon instantly parsed out the structure of the hammer. This thing is based on texture and structure and the like, there is no surprise, just like a hammer made by hand, the density of the material is amazing, it has an amazing quality itself, and there is a structure that is closely linked by magic, other than that, there is no brilliance. Understand, this thing is a lightning amplifier, no wonder when Thor, the god of thunder, holds the hammer, the lightning on his body is amazing, and when there is no hammer, he can't trigger the lightning at all. After understanding this, he had no interest in this hammer, although he did not understand the principle of magic in it, but if he reached the third level, he could use his own ability to shape the shape at will, and he could make exactly the same thing, of course, the kind that lacked core magic. Forget it, although I can easily destroy this thing, if it is destroyed, Thor will definitely immediately pounce on the street, but I have to find a way to go to Asgard. Episode 62. He unlocked the control of the mind force on Thor's hammer, and the latter fell to the ground with a loud bang, without trembling, as if it were a magnet firmly attached to the earth. Waving his hand to disperse the dust that had stirred up around him, Leon turned back to Agent Phil and said, "Let all of you people get rid of it, just leave a few guards and don't let ordinary people come over, you can't take this thing away." It was waiting for its owner, and its owner looked like he would soon be able to come and take it away. Its owner? What did Agent Phil think? Yes, it is Thor, the god of thunder, whose household registration is Asgardian, not under the jurisdiction of the earth, commonly known as aliens. This man is a bit reckless, but his heart is not bad. But his brother Loki is a slippery head, so you have to be careful. Well. Good. Leon's words, Phil listened to some of the clouds, but he still carefully wrote it down, because Leon did not seem to be joking, and there was also a lot of information about aliens in S.H.I.E.L.D., who knew far more than ordinary people. Leon and Chingray came here not only for the sake of the hammer, but to see the hammer out of curiosity, he actually wanted to find a way to Asgard. After doing this, he was ready to leave with Chingray, but at this moment, his look was slightly moving, and his eyes were looking in one direction, and like him, Chingray also turned his head to look at one place at the same time. The next moment, Phil's walkie-talkie came from a soldier's voice. "Sir, there is." There was a kind of high-energy that suddenly appeared outside the base, like some sort of teleporter. Wait, something came out of it, ah. After a few short words and a scream, the side of the walkie-talkie fell silent, and at this time there was a rumbling explosion outside, and a series of crisp gunshots. "It seems that you don't have to hurry to leave first." Leon did not speak, directly disappeared from the same place, and the next moment appeared outside the base, looking around. In front of him was a thick beam of light of 7 colors hanging on the ground, and the light was dissipating. He looked up and saw that the light pierced through the clouds, and even the tail end revealed the dark nature of space. Rainbow Bridge. He flashed here and walked directly into the teleportation range of the Rainbow Bridge, and his spiritual power quickly extended along this teleportation channel, and he immediately saw a magnificent country of golden splendor at the other end. Asgard. The Rainbow Bridge is a one-way teleportation. He can't pass according to this teleportation channel, but this does not prevent him from writing down the stars of Asgard. In fact, it is very simple. The teleportation can record the special code of each space, as long as it is seen by Leon and then understood the spatial coordinates. He can teleport. Now, the purpose of coming here is directly completed, because he has written down the coordinates of Asgard's space in just a split second. Oh, is it so far? After getting the spatial coordinates, he couldn't laugh a little, because Asgard was too far away from the Earth, so far away that his current ability could not directly teleport past. At this time, the teleportation light of the Rainbow Bridge had stopped, and after returning to the gods, a huge humanoid monster that seemed to be made of steel was raging in the base. This humanoid monster was 6 or 7 meters tall, its head was hollow, there were flames burning inside its face, and its attack method was to emit hot rays from the hollowed-out face to destroy what it saw. Under this high-temperature ray, the armored vehicle was instantly pierced and exploded, and the human body was directly carbonized under this high temperature, and it can be imagined how terrifying the temperature was. Chingray appeared beside him at some point, and Leon pointed to the thing. "Tear it up." Chingray's voice did not say a word. She directly put into action. A light red light appeared on her body, and a wisp of it wrapped the humanoid monster up. She stretched out her hand and twisted it slightly, and the creaking sound appeared on the thing. Then, visible to the naked eye, the thing was like a twisted into a ball by an invisible force, and then it was squeezed, and finally it was directly squeezed into a large iron ball. "Very good, your mind control has increased a little. This thing is an extremely powerful magical creation of Asgard. If it is put on the Earth, it can easily destroy the existence of a country." Yes, this thing is the destroyer, and Loki used a ruse to teleport to Earth to kill his brother Thor. Leon touched it and solved it with his bare hands, and he was eager to see Loki's face after the plan was defeated. Episode 63. Of course, it is impossible to put it on a big country like the United States, and it is great that a mushroom egg has passed, and even the most awesome things have to fly ash. But if it is placed on some small countries, the destroyer can really destroy a country. But no matter how strong this thing is, when it encounters a bug-level existence like Leon and Chingray, it has to kneel. The group of people in the back were completely stunned and completely paddled at this time. In their eyes, the ferocious monster that could plow out a ditch with a single light just now was actually solved so easily, which was quite unreal. After watching Gray's done, Leon just shrugged his shoulders and did not take this to heart, but turned his head and waved to Phil, who looked strangely forward, and did not say anything more, waiting for his command. Leon is the strongest man here, and he knows exactly what to do now. Or according to what I just said, it's all ripped off, and the rest is nothing for you. Well. Agent Phil agreed very crisply, having seen the destructive power of the monster just now, and having seen the ability of Leon and Leon, he knew that ordinary people really couldn't intervene in these things. Seeing the crispness of his promise, Leon also nodded and held out his hand to Chingray, who held hands with him, and then the two figures disappeared together. Until this time, Agent Phil suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, recalled the scene just now, and felt sweaty behind his back. This is fortunately the presence of Leon and Leon, otherwise he would not have known how much damage this side of the base would have. He also hurried to make arrangements quickly, and also contacted the bureau. But these things are not what Leon needs to care about, and his purpose of coming this time has been successfully achieved, so he returns with Chingray, and he has other plans to do. Back at his residence, Leon did not idle, but instead asked Svija, what happened to the infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D. The S.H.I.E.L.D. database has been infiltrated by 163%, from which a lot of information has been obtained, and the cosmic cube you are looking for has also been news, and it has now been accurately located. S.H.I.E.L.D wrote. Very good, the address sent over. Despite his orders, S.H.I.E.L.D reported a list of addresses, which was a very secret large research room of S.H.I.E.L.D, and the cosmic cube was stored in it, and now the people of S.H.I.E.L.D were using that thing to develop weapons of mass destruction. These are the same as the original plot. In fact, he has begun to order S.H.I.E.L.D to carry out this infiltration very early, but he does not want to fight the snake, and it has only recently been obvious results. He now had Asgard's spatial coordinate positioning, and if he wanted to move there, it was naturally impossible to teleport with his own mind. After all, the distance between the two could be calculated in hundreds of thousands of light years. Relying on his own psychic teleportation, exhausted, he could not do this step now. After all, he was still in the second stage of the development of the Phoenix Force. If you want to soar and move freely in the universe, you have to wait at least until the fourth stage, which is still a bit far. Sheen, later, I need you to go outside to make some movements, and I'll tell you the specific direction later. Just want to make some movements, you choose it yourself. Jean Grey, still cold, just silently nodded. She followed Liang to pursue a powerful force, with Liang as the main point. She was acquiescing. Liang saw her like this, and didn't say much. Dark Phoenix's personality was a little cold, but in bed it was a wonderful thing. As soon as he thought of this, the corners of his mouth cocked. Well, the time is still there, let's have another friendly match. Gret's eyes flickered, and then she didn't speak, and turned her head and walked toward the resting room. For her, the way to strengthen herself was this, and she would not refuse at all. In the blink of an eye, 6 or 7 had disappeared, and it was late at night, and in a laboratory near the outskirts of S.H.I.E.L.D. Countless people were busy, and Nick Fury was here, looking through the transparent glass window as the experimenters were busy going back and forth, and on the test bench was a metal ring with this sophisticated instrument on it. In the center of the ring, there is a blue cube that is blooming with a gentle glow, and the color is as clear as the sea. This is the cosmic Rubik's Cube, also known as the Space Gem, which is one of the 6 infinity gems of the Marvel Universe, which has the ability to travel freely throughout the universe, and can move itself or all objects to any space at will. It is also possible to arbitrarily distort or reorder space according to the user's will, so that the ability of space teleportation and space stationary is as simple as breathing in front of the space stone. At the same time, it also contains incomparably huge energy, almost infinite. Episode 64. How is the energy extraction of the cosmic cube done? Nick Fury asked to a staff member next to him. It is going very smoothly, and 30 secondary energy blocks have been successfully produced with the cosmic cube, each of which has a sum of nearly 3,000ths of the energy of the original body, and if the energy of the secondary energy block is converted into electricity, it can supply the entire Earth for about 30 years. The staff member replied seriously. Are there any usage requirements? Nick Fury asked again. Yes, the energy level of this pure energy body is too high, and in terms of the current level of science and technology on the Earth, it is still a bit reluctant to use it completely, and the secondary energy block can only be stored for 3 months at most. Because current processes can't prevent energy evasion in secondary energy blocks, this is something that current technology can't do, even with a strong magnetic field constraint. The staff member shook his head. Nick Fury bowed his head slightly. His dark face could not see the expression, looking at the busy people below, and only after half a moment did he say, then seize the time and see if you can use these secondary energy blocks to develop powerful weapons. Yes, Director, there are now 3 alternatives in terms of weapons, namely the high-energy ray gun, the energy matrix battery, and the energy matrix shield, which several engineers who lead the development of the weapon have suggested that priority be given to the energy matrix shield. Nick Fury nodded, not asking too much about this issue. He came today to count as a routine inspection. This is S.H.I.E.L.D's secret weapons research and development base, which is the most important of all core departments, because it is related to the unique thing in the universe, such as the cosmic Rubik's Cube. The importance can be imagined. You try to develop it. He gave a command, and then he was ready to leave. But at this moment, the whole laboratory suddenly flashed red, and I saw one warning light after another, and the beep of the alarm was sounding. What's going on? Nick Fury hurriedly picked up the communicator and asked. Bad Director, someone has already attacked the 3 layers of A1, A2, and A3, and is currently in turmoil on the A4 floor, and we have sent people to reinforce, but the people are coming. The people who came were mutants, extremely capable, and it was difficult for the people here to resist it. The people in the defense department were shouting in the intertalkie, and Nick Fury could even hear the gunfire of fried beans in the communicator, and his face changed suddenly. Quick! The base defense mechanism was activated, the lower 3 floors were blockaded, all scientific researchers retreated, and armed guards entered the field. You, go down and put away the cosmic cube and give it to me. Nick Fury hurriedly commanded. The man standing next to him was stunned, and then he ran down with a change of look, and the researchers were ordered to move one by one, and Nick Fury quickly took 2 boxes and prepared to evacuate. With his order, a large group of heavily armed men ran in, of which a dozen or so guarded him, and the rest went up to support and defend against the onslaught. Nicholas Fury, surrounded by people, got up from a special elevator, and soon came to the surface, thought about handing one of the boxes in his hand to an armed man, and gave a few commands in his ear, and the man hurried away. Then Nick Fury looked around warily. This was the parking lot, and his car was not far away. "Director Nick Fury, why are you in such a hurry to go?" Suddenly, a voice sounded in his ears, and suddenly everyone pointed their guns in the direction where the sound came from, looking extremely alert, and they saw a man coming out of the corner. "It's you." Nick Fury's face changed, because the person who appeared in front of him was none other than Leon, who came to him with a faint smile on his face, ignored the guns that were pointed at him, and said, "Director Nick, can you borrow the contents of the box in your hand? You're here for the cosmic Rubik's Cube?" Nick Fury's dark face seemed a little darker, but it couldn't be seen in the light. "Of course, I solved the matter of the Northwest Desert for you, and I came to collect some remuneration." Leon smiled lightly. "The cosmic cube cannot be handed over to you, and that thing must not fall into your hands." Nick Fury was absolutely determined. "Huh?" Leon just snorted twice, then said, "Are you afraid I'll use it to develop weapons?" "Of course." Nick Fury rode. "Why would you use it to develop your own weapons?" Leon asked rhetorically. Nick Fury winced slightly, and then said with a serious face, "We are different from you, we represent the country, we represent the security of the whole United States, and only more powerful weapons can ensure that we are not threatened by others." "That includes me too, right?" Leon asked suddenly. "That's for sure." Nick Fury said it crisply. Leon suddenly smiled at this time. He groped his chin and said, "Let me think, you are so tough now, you have already expected that someone will come here, then. Are you dragging your feet? If you think about it this way, what you have in your hands is simply fake, right?" Episode 65. Nick Fury heard the words and his face trembled, but he did not answer his words, but his heart suddenly became anxious, and even the hand holding the box could not help but tighten. He thought that he was doing very well, but he didn't know that all this had fallen into Liang's eyes, so he saw Liang suddenly laugh and said, "In the end, it is a person who has been playing with his own tricks, and in this case, there is such a quick wit, among ordinary people, you are already a very great kind. Unfortunately, it seems that you have never taken my words to heart, and I told you that S.H.I.E.L.D. has long been infiltrated like a sieve by the Hydra people, so why didn't you come to a big screening? Are you so sure that the person who takes the real thing is your person? What if someone is an agent of Hydra?" Liang hugged his arm as if smiling, as if he was not in a hurry at all. Nick Fury's face finally changed, and he had a bad premonition in his heart, but just at this moment, his communicator rang, he picked it up and put it to his ear, and then his face became very ugly. "What, did I guess that?" The smile on Leon's face became more and more obvious. This smile fell into Nick Fury's eyes, it was almost naked ridicule. He whispered a damn curse, and then hurriedly told the people next to him, "Go after the man just now, he is indeed the man of the Hydra, don't let him run." "But director, your side." "No, do as I say, go now." Nick Fury said loudly. "Yes." The rest of the people immediately hurried back to the same way to chase after the past. At this time there were only Leon and Nick Fury left in the field. Neither of them spoke at this time. Leon looked as usual and even laughed, while Nick Fury was gloomy and ugly. "What do you want the cosmic cube to do?" In the end, Nick Fury could only ask out loud. Leon shrugged, "Maybe it's to be used as a chandelier, or to develop super weapons, or to use this place to study the universe, but who knows?" Hearing him say this, Nick Fury was even more uneasy, and said directly, "This thing must not fall on you. If you really use it to develop superweapons, it will be a disaster for all of humanity." Liang was not angry, but he smiled and said, "Don't say this too much, human beings are a very strange species, sometimes they are at ease with encounters, sometimes they become extremely united because of external forces, you S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously know the existence of aliens, compared to me, they are the biggest threat, but you look at human society, it is still like this, when the aliens come, what do you take to resist? Take the weapons developed in the laboratory below?" Nick Fury's face changed, obviously worried about why Leon would know this, and then listened to Leon again. "Instead of letting the aliens threaten you, it is better to let me threaten, at least my threat is there, you are like a tightened clockwork, every moment there is motivation, so think, the cosmic cube is the most appropriate in my hand. Isn't it?" Liang said a perverse reasoning. Nick Fury naturally will not agree, he even at this time did not bother to talk to Liang again, and then directly said, "The cosmic Rubik's cube cannot be handed over to you, I advise you not to fight other ideas. If this time you are still dangerous to national security, then. How? Are you ready to use force against me? I'm looking forward to it. The smile on Leon's face grew brighter. Nick Fury's threatening words were suffocated, and he was half-choked and unable to speak. Just at this moment, there were footsteps in the empty parking lot. It was the sound of high heels, from far and near, and in a short while a figure appeared in front of the two people. A slender figure walked in through the entrance of the parking lot, with high heels, a plump and tall figure, wearing a close-quarters suit and a cape on his back, and his face was extremely plain. And she was carrying a box exactly like Nick Fury's hand, and when she saw this, Nick Fury's eyes shrank and her body couldn't help but tremble a little. It was Jean Grey, who came to Leon with no expression on her face, handed him the box, and Leon took it and opened it, and a blue cube lay quietly in it. His hand touched it, the touch was warm, like warm jade, and as soon as he thought about it, he felt the extremely majestic energy in it, and the thought was thrown into it, and he could even peek into the corner of the universe. Well, it's the real thing. He closed the box, smiled at Nick Fury, and shook the box in his hand at him. Look, I didn't snatch this from you, I snatched it from the Hydra Man, and this is my booty. So don't say I'm endangering national security again. Episode 66. Saying that, Leon waved goodbye to him, pulling Grey's and disappearing in front of his eyes, while Nick Fury looked gloomy, as if he could drip water. Leon's sarcasm just now, he did not dare to respond, because the top management of the United States let the think tank have an analysis, and finally concluded that this is a real extra-legal fanatic. He will not care what the law is, what kind of restrictions will be on him, he will only follow his own style, that is, do as he pleases. Nick Fury was really afraid that if he couldn't help but say two words, the other party would kill him, then he could be too wronged. When the two left, he angrily threw the look in his hand directly to the ground, and when he smashed it out of the distance, he himself was gasping and roaring, "Damn! I will not let you go." He is the king of agents, the director of the Cold Face, in a high position in S.H.I.E.L.D. It can be said that S.H.I.E.L.D. is supported by him, he is a legend, but in the face of Leon, he still has no sense of security. The people around him who were protecting him also laid down their weapons at this time. Just now they were just as stressed. They knew Leon, but they didn't know Liang's ability, but everyone present had a premonition that as long as they did it themselves, the next moment they would die. "Director, what should we do?" one asked. "Transfer," Nick Fury said coldly. Then he turned his head and walked toward the car, and as for the box that he had thrown out, someone naturally picked it up, and then the group hurried to drive away, while Nick Fury was still in contact with the outside world. Adjust the security level for Leon to the highest red level, and form another emergency response team for Leon. According to what I said, he has already obtained the cosmic cube. This thing in his hands absolutely will become the source of turmoil. In addition. At this point, he spoke in a slight tone, and then took a deep breath and said, "Tell the old men of Congress that war. It's time to get started." Leon's side, by this time, had returned to a highly secretive laboratory, which was a large laboratory under Manhattan, and Leon had invested more than 6 billion yuan in order to build this laboratory, and the facilities here were the most expensive of all his laboratories. Experiments like what weapons, biological experiments, and other types of experiments can be done here, and it is the most perfect of all the laboratories under his name. In one of the experimental halls, there is a platform more than 70 centimeters high, on which there are many metals and pipelines forming an upright ring, and at the bottom there is a gap, which is just square. Leon and Jean Grey appeared here, and he looked around, and all the equipment was already running, something he had prepared 2 years earlier, for ultra-long-distance space teleportation. After preparing for so long, it can finally come in handy. I saw the electric light flowing on the ring, and in some places, there was still energy that escaped slightly, humming. Leon stood on the round table, inhaled slightly, and placed the cosmic cube in his hand on the gap, just enclose the seam. Hum. The cosmic Rubik's cube instantly bloomed with light, and the ring was suddenly stained with a pale blue halo at this moment, and a prototype blue aura appeared in front of him, and in the aura was an inexplicable blue light that surged like a wave of water, and a cluster of grass blades was more like a wave. He stepped on the ground and a console rose next to him, and then he began to move on the console. First of all, he entered the Asgardian space coordinates just a few times, positioned it with the strong energy and space capture ability of the cosmic cube, and directly connected to its coordinates. Just like an orbital connection, he directly linked the coordinates to the Rainbow Bridge. It's like smuggling, and it's hard to get around Heimdall, the guardian of Asgard, but with the cosmic cube there, it's very easy to do. Whoever gives the cosmic cube the ability to travel freely throughout the universe, this ability is reflected in the level of rules, not what Asgardian space magic can block. It is completely to break the trick, at the deepest level of information to outline the results he wants. Space anchoring is complete, and all that's left is to fully activate the energy of the cosmic cube and build the portal. With that, he continued to operate, and after a few moments, a more brilliant light bloomed on the ring, which was already a little dazzling, and the scenery in the ring became as brilliant as an aurora. Suddenly, the light in the aura quickly continuous, then became transparent, and then a vague scene appeared in the ring, and as time went on, the scene became more and more condensed until it finally became a reality. Entranced to the Rainbow Bridge, guardian of Heimdall. Leon could already see the Golden Hall and the guard in the hall with his eyes closed. Episode 67. Everything that appeared in the ring was the view from the entrance to the Rainbow Bridge in Asgard, the circular hall, and the black man with the sword on the high platform in the hall, all of which seemed extremely real. This is indeed true, Leon can clearly see all this, but the opposite Heimdall does not know this, because Leon is using the cosmic cube to fix the coordinates of Asgardian space. Now it is like a one-way mirror, there is a spatial barrier, Leon can observe them, but they cannot know Leon. Only Heimdall, his closed eyes trembling, his brow slightly wrinkled, and then he opened his eyes, and there were stars flickering in his eyes, as if they were rainbows, and his pupils were extremely deep, as if he could see through everything. He looked up, and his gaze passed through the layers of time and space barriers, and landed on Leon. Leon smiled at him and looked at him. Heimdall, the eye of Heimdall, who perceives everything, can see clearly every corner of the world, and if Leon's ability is a bug-level existence, Heimdall's eyes are a god's perspective. Hello, Heimdall. Leon smiled. This voice could not be heard by others, but Heimdall could hear it in Qingxi, so he heard him speak. Who are you? I'm an Earthling, my name is Leon, and it's a pleasure to meet you. Liang's smile was gentle, and his words were also very polite. But Heimdall said in a deep voice, I felt the movement of the Rainbow Bridge, it seems that there is an external force imposing on it, is it you who did it? Yes, I got it. Leon admitted crisply. Then he held out his hand to Chingray, who stepped forward with great understanding, standing shoulder to shoulder with him, and then the two of them stepped out at the same time, crossed the circular portal, and reached the entrance of the Rainbow Bridge in Asgard. Looking up, Heimdall was ahead. Heimdall's brow furrowed, and by this time he had already stood up, and the sword that had been inserted on the high platform had also been drawn out by it, and he asked solemnly, How did you do it? How did you do that? Liang raised an eyebrow, Do you mean how I got here? Behind the two of them, there was a light blue light surging and rolling, and in that light was the scene of the laboratory. He just smiled lightly and said, As you can see, we have used some special methods. Intruder, no matter what method you use, you have now violated the law of Asgard and are ready to accept sanctions. No, don't do it, I'm here just to see, if you do, then you're my enemy, are you sure you want to do it? Liang asked with a smile. Heimdall did not say a word, at this time he was already clutching the sword in his hand. He was an Asgardian, one of the mythical gods, a man named the patron saint of Asgard, and the first shot was a strong wind. If the captain of the United States represents the limit of ordinary people, then Heimdall is the limit of Asgard's human physique, not to mention that he still has surging magical abilities on his body. The long sword is swinging, so that the face has been contaminated with fire streamers, and if it is cut by this piece, even if it is a piece of steel, it can be easily cut into two sections. This is for ordinary people, and it just so happens that Leon and Qingray are not ordinary people. He can only shake his head helplessly when he sees this, and then he raises his hand and swings slightly to the side. The next moment, Heimdall's lightning-like body was suddenly frozen. He held aloft his long sword, his body was covered with golden armor, and the ground that he trampled on was cracked by the huge reaction force, and the cracks spread out like cobwebs. Above that long sword, a light like a fire was flashing, and a surging energy was also stimulated in his body. But this was nothing to Leon, he was just a thought, and Heimdall's forward momentum was stopped, similar to being cast by someone who had performed a fixation technique, and it was difficult to move for half a minute. They all said don't do it, I really don't have any malicious intentions, and I came here because of curiosity. As he spoke, he pulled Gray, and the two of them crossed Heimdall, and at the moment of the mistake Leon said, You can inform the god King Odin, I am looking forward to meeting him. The next moment, the two figures disappeared from their eyes, and after the two left, Heimdall still maintained this action, until 2 minutes later, he suddenly noticed that the restraints on his body had disappeared. Phew. His figure slammed forward for some distance before stopping, and quickly looked back at the location of Asgard City, his eyes full of solemnity. My king. Asgard was invaded, and 2 Earth humans, a man and a woman, appeared here, and I am not an opponent. Heimdall immediately contacted Odin. He was the guardian, the janitor of the Rainbow Bridge, and there was a special way of connecting nature with Odin. I already know. A thick voice sounded in the air. Episode 68. Asgard, the realm of the Asgard clan, can also be called the Asgard domain, where all the gods who worship Odin as the main god live, such as Thor, the god of thunder and deception, Loki, the god of lies and deception, and the previous Heimdall, and even other gods. Of course, these are all self-proclaimed by them, but if you really count, the Asgard clan is indeed an extremely powerful race. They are proficient in magic, their flesh is strong, and it is not too much for ordinary people to call them gods. But in Leon's eyes, these gods were now nothing more than large beasts, and there was nothing special about them. He and Chingray appear in the city-state of Asgard, surrounded by all the buildings made of gold and boulders, full of a wild and noble atmosphere, and in the center of the city there is a very tall palace, which is arranged from high to low by boulders, and the highest one in the center is thousands of meters high. On top of that towering boulder, there was something like an eye, shining with a brilliant golden light, like the sun, illuminating the whole of Asgard. This is Asgard, and the energy that is free here is really powerful, and to survive in this environment, even ordinary people can live a lot of life, and their strength will gradually become stronger. Leon nodded. He vaguely felt a kind of prying, which seemed to come from the mind, but this strange power just wanted to envelop his mind. It was detected by his telepathy, and the last thought, this power was strangled. Leon then used his telepathic ability to spread along the source of this power, and then in his line of sight, he saw an old man sitting high on the golden throne. This old man looked majestic and mighty, a white hair shawl, his right eye was covered by a golden blindfold, and his intact left eye was full of majesty. Odin. The old man on the throne raised his head, looked through the space and looked at him, and then a smile appeared on his face, and his voice rumbled, "Guests from afar, please come in." Leon smiled in return, and the figures of the two disappeared again, and when they reappeared, they were already standing in front of Odin. He didn't like to look up at others, so at this time the two hovered in midair, even higher than Odin, who looked at him and needed to look up, while he looked down at Odin. "Two guests, how did you get here?" Odin seemed very calm, or rather, the kingly spirit in his body made him still not change his face in this situation, just curious about the arrival of the two. "I came here to locate Asgard through the cosmic cube to ask you for something," Leon said with a smile on his face. "What is needed?" Odin asked. "Eternal fire, and your Asgardian magic system," Leon said calmly. "Ha ha ha." Odin laughed violently, shaking his head slightly. "The eternal fire is my secret, and the Asgardian magic system is the foundation of our existence. These two things are very important. I can't give it to you, so please don't make such jokes." "I'm not kidding." Leon also had a smile on his face. The smile on Odin's face gradually faded, and then he stood up, took the spear cane inserted in the side, and slammed it into the ground. Boom. As if thundering on the ground, a shock wave spread around him with him as the center, and Liang and Qingray's presence under this shock wave was not half uncomfortable, and even the corners of the clothes were not lifted. He looked at Odin so calmly, and the latter also looked at him, and only after half a moment did he say, "Do you know how rude your request is? And besides, this is also a provocation to my Asgard. Do you want to provoke war?" Liang shook his head. "War is not war, I don't care, I represent me personally. If you want war, I will give you war." The air seemed to freeze at this moment, and the atmosphere was extremely heavy. And at this moment, a group of people outside the temple rushed in, each of them wearing armor and holding spears, and the brilliant golden armor on their bodies shone with brilliance, and everyone here was a warrior of Asgard, a person who had been trained in blood and fire. "War, the result is terrible, have you thought about it?" Odin said with a serious look on his face. "Then fight." Leon was just smiling, and then said to Chingray, "The people below are handed over to you." Chingray nodded. She didn't say much, but at the same time as Leon's words fell, her eyes became dark, and the desire to destroy everything appeared, making her look terrifying. I saw her raise her hand, and the flames of light behind her surged out, opening up like a pair of huge wings, and a strong pressure enveloped all the warriors. Episode 69. The next moment, a strong force burst out from her body, and the pale red light was like a blazing flame, like a karmic fire source, instantly filling the corner of the hall, and the armor on each warrior's body was clanging, one by one, as if it had been hit by a huge force, and it flew backwards without stopping. What's more, they were directly thrown out by inexplicable forces, and the armor on the worst face became broken. Qingray's mind did not use telepathy or mind power control, just the power of the phoenix power erupted, and the radiance of this power shocked people to lift their heads. If she wanted to, even if she faced the warriors of the divine clan, she could still erase them in one thought. Ah. 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 A terrible scream came out, and the Asgardian warriors, who had just been lined up in a neat line, suddenly turned over on their horses. Leon looked at Odin with a faint smile under this force, and Odin did not seem to be affected by the aftermath of the phoenix force, but his face had become heavier and heavier. He knew that the two people in front of him must be different from what he expected, and they must be strong and excessive. And Jean Grey's next action also made his vision come true, and he saw Jean Grey's fierce push forward, and the reddish light swirling around him was like a substance like flame, directly sweeping towards those warriors, and the burning meaning, even Odin felt a shock. Seeing this, Odin slammed the long staff in his hand, and with a humming sound, a brilliant golden light erupted from under his feet and swept across the ground, instantly enveloping all the warriors as if they were plated with gold. The two forces came into contact with those warriors, the former destroying and the latter protecting, as if the warrior's body were used as a battlefield, and suddenly collided together. Ah! Ah! Under the action of the two majestic forces, those warriors were miserable, and the armor on each body began to twist in an instant, along with his flesh or limbs, and began to writhe. In this case, the body of one warrior after another became unstable, some arms were broken into several sections out of thin air, some were bleeding from the mouth and nose, and more tragically, the body began to bend at a strange angle directly from the waist and abdomen. The sound of broken bones in the field was frequent, and more was the screams of those soldiers. You! Odin was angry, and he stood up in anger, and his body was suddenly stained with a brilliant golden color, like a fiery flame, and the divine power surrounded him, forming a series of magic runes, and there was a strong force on it that escaped, making the hall tremble under this power. His name is Odin, he is worshipped as the king of the gods, he is the king of the entire Asgard, and he is also the top strong man among the Aes God clan, not to do nothing like in the movie plot. Even Leon, under this power, is also a little surprised, because he found that the Odin in front of him is not weak as imagined, but still very strong. Magic was something that the Aes God clan was good at, a power that was very different from the mutant ability and the power, and he found that there was a huge destructive power in those runes. The golden light on Odin's body transformed into a substantial flame, and the temperature was enough to incinerate the King Kong divine iron, and it also had at least 3,000 or 4,000 degrees, which could instantly shock a person. Then the flame, like a rope, instantly bound Leon, and then covered him and wrapped him into a cocoon, intending to incinerate him into fly ash. And Leon also felt a strong threat from this temperature. He had a healing factor, indeed he was not afraid of flame incineration, and even the speed of flame burning him, not as fast as his recovery, but it was only 1,000 degrees of ordinary flames, like the flame of this temperature, his body would definitely have no small damage. But this was only a threat, his thoughts moved, and the phoenix power on his body gushed out, wrapping every corner of his body, and then the phoenix force counterattacked like a big wave, directly shattering the flames that surrounded him at one time, and then without stopping, heading towards Odin's package. Odin was not surprised that the flames were shattered. He paused the long staff that represented full strength in his palm, and a layer of light-flowing shield rose in front of him, which was magical power, and the light blue shield was covered with Xian'eo's runes, which could actually block the power of the phoenix outside. Seeing this, Liang just smiled slightly and held out his hand to him. The latter saw his smile sink in his heart, and the next moment he realized that something was wrong. Odin found that the metal accessories on his body cracked in an instant, and then turned into a liquid like a wave of water, and then quickly formed a series of sharp steel needles, each of which was more than 30 centimeters long. These long metal needles then burst out a strong electric current, and the long needles also stabbed into his body along with the electric snake. Aha! He snorted in pain, and the divine body was suddenly pierced, and those steel needles penetrated it, but instead flew out, but melted again, instantly flowing into his heart like liquid along the blood on his body. Episode 70. Odin's face became very bad, and he was enduring the pain at this time. He sensed something strange in his body, something was gushing down the blood to the heart, and a sharp pain was gushing through his body, and the divine body could not stop this pain. But this did not mean that he had no way to stop it, so he saw him turn around and turn to the divine power, instantly reinforcing the blood vessels, and then the runes penetrated into his body, making his already golden armor even more dazzling. In his body, Fuwen made a chain of chains, and instantly found those metal liquids that were messing up, and then the chains were directly trapped on it, and the unique magical power acted on it, actually severing the connection between Liang and metal. Huh? This surprised Leon, who was not surprised by this situation for the first time, and it was obvious that Odin must have had something else on his hand that had not been shown. Then I saw Odin's body tremble, and the metal liquid that was messing around in his body was forced out by him, flowing out of those wounds, and then you could see that the wounds on his body healed quickly, which was not weaker than the self-healing factor on Leon's body. Is this the power of magic? Liang had curiosity in his eyes. He still blocked Odin's movements. Magnetic force may be blocked, but the mind force cannot be blocked. This is the power arising from Liang's thoughts. It is the most fundamental thing in his body. Odin still maintained his original strength, and the runes oozed out of his body again, one brighter than the other, one more brilliant than the other, and there was also a huge pressure on the runes that condensed and came towards Leon's oppression. Liang stood where he was, under the pressure. The corners of his clothes did not move, and he seemed very calm, and this calmness fell into Odin's eyes, which was somewhat elusive. The root of your power comes from these runes, right? Li smiled at him, and Odin was shocked. Just listen to Liang continue. Where does the origin of this power come from? Runes are the embodiment of a collection of your powers, and you also have a force in your body that I don't understand very well, and this force makes up these runes, and the combination of these runes can form all kinds of abilities: earth, fire, water, wind, and everything. It seems that the problem arises in the body of your clan, or on the bloodline. It's not hard to master magic, like this. Leon said and held out his hand, and a rune appeared in his palm, slowly rotating in the palm of his hand, and there was a verdant color on it. It represents life. Immediately after that, the runes changed and became gray. It represents death. Then the ashes turned into heat. It's fire. The fire turned blue. It's the flow of water. The blue turns brown. This is the earth. Brown became colorless. It's a breeze. Liang said this, his palm squeezed violently, and the rune that represented magic energy collapsed in his hand, only to hear him laugh. Magic is actually very simple to master, especially for me. As long as I have seen what you have cast, I can easily understand, and after understanding, now magic is no longer a secret thing for me. Odin's face turned ugly, looking at Leon as if he were looking at a monster. He said in a deep voice, since you have mastered the power of magic, then I hope you can stop, and if you continue like this, you will truly be the enemy of my Asgard. No, it seems that you are mistaken. I understand magic. This is my ability. It does not mean that I am satisfied. Just like I just said, give me the magic technology of your clan and the eternal fire. I will naturally go when I get something. Why do you want these two things? Odin asked, in a deep voice. Why? Leon smiled. Because of curiosity. He pointed to his chest and said in a loud voice, I am a scientist and a researcher. I am studying all the knowledge about this universe, whether it is magic, or even scientific forces. These are my research topics. Perhaps you may not know that this universe is deformed, the rules of the universe, everything. All show an extreme instability. This seems to me to be something that can collapse at any moment, and I don't know how long this universe can exist in this situation, so I'm going to study it. That's what your purpose is? Odin was a little incredulous. No. Liang smiled and said, of course, my purpose is not this. Studying these things is just to let me better understand this universe. What I want is a truly stable universe. No mutants, no magic, nothing contrary to common sense. That kind of universe is truly perfect. But what I see is only some people wantonly using the power in their hands to destroy the stability of this universe, so that it can collapse at any time, which is not the result I want to see. Since you do not cherish, then, I will control the universe, and then change the universe.